crazy Queen of Scots was a heck of a disturbing lady with a lot of secrets she wanted to keep quiet. Thankfully for us, there's more than the official record of what she got up to, so bless all those gossipy old birds back in the day for their service. Question for you, what's your opinion on the crazy queen? Let me know in the comments and let's dive into today. For starters, the Queen had some very hypocritical takes when it came to all things witchcraft. Let's start from the beginning. So the Scottish Witchcraft Act of 1563 made the practice of sorcery and consorting with witches a capital crime. It led to the execution of up to 2,000 people over the next 150 years, so just a couple of folks, and this was under the Queen's reign. But here's the kicker. This very much falls under do as I say, not as I do. Mary experienced a very difficult birth on the delivery of her one son, the future James VI, in 1566, and to get rid of the agony, the Countess of Atholl used her experience of witchcraft to transfer the Queen's pain onto Margaret, Lady Reres, who then took to her bed given the pain she experienced, according to Ron Holiday in his book Famous Scots and the Supernatural. So, just to get this all straight, Mary allowed the execution of witches, then she had a spell put on one of her friends 3 years later when most folks would have been executed for just having a witch's mark. And by that I mean the hatred of someone and a freckle on your skin was all it took for an accusation and the end of your life. White dresses for weddings might be a cultural norm or expectation nowadays, but things weren't always that way in history. Mary caused quite the scandal when she married her first husband, Francis II of France, in Notre Dame in 1558, dressed all in white, which was then regarded as the French color for mourning. At the time, a white dress was a clear indication of her social standing, because white fabric is difficult to bleach, maintain, and was unlikely to be worn again. Apparently, it was Mary's favorite color, because it supposedly flattered her pale complexion and set off her striking auburn hair and golden hazel eyes. She arrived in triumph at the cathedral in the robe, let's get the direct quote, a robe whiter than lily, but so glorious in its fashion and decorations that it would be difficult, nay impossible, for any pen to do justice to its details. Her train was 12 yards long and was made so heavy by all the jewels set within it that it had to be carried along by 2 of her ladies as she walked. To set it all off, she wore a golden crown and a matching pendant, absolutely crammed with precious stones. The courtier Pierre de Brantôme described her as 100 times more beautiful than a goddess of heaven. Her person alone was worth a kingdom. Throughout most of history, brides wore special occasion dresses that could be worn to any formal event, which meant that wedding dresses could be any color except black, which is the main color for mourning. In many countries, red was also out of question because it was associated with selling one's bodily services. Honestly, in retrospect, Mary's choice of dress color might have cursed her. Because as stunning as that wedding dress might have sounded, poor Mary was unlucky in love. So her first husband, Francis, yeah, he died pretty young. He might have been her true love, like her one true love, and I think the Reign TV show really got that across, but sadly he passed away just 2 years into their marriage. After that, his mother, Catherine de Medici, who had always viewed Mary as a threat and just didn't like her, ensured that she got banished back to Scotland. Now Mary's second marriage looked more promising, and this one was to Henry Stuart, otherwise known as Lord Darnley. During her first meeting with him, one courtier described the following: Her Majesty took well with him, and said that he was the lustiest and best proportioned man she had seen. Well hello, that's high praise. Together they gave birth to a descendant, James, in June of 1566, but sadly the marriage was not good, and in a state of turmoil by that point. Darnley was supposedly a weak man, and Mary gave him no real authority to rule. Yeah, sounds right. As a result, he became a drunkard. During that pregnancy, Mary witnessed the intentional killing of her personal secretary, David Rizzio, at the hands of Darnley and other nobles, who suspected him of seducing the Queen. And by witnessed, I mean witnessed with her own 2 eyes. He was killed in front of her. On March 9th of 1566, David Rizzio was impaled around 80 times in front of the pregnant queen at the instigation of her husband. And this was apparently in a bid to destroy both her and the unborn heir, so that Darnley could rule, because he didn't have any power. He also made a bargain with his allies in return for restoring their lands and titles. Well, flash forward to February of 1567, he fell foul of a plot himself. An explosion occurred in the building where he was staying in Edinburgh, and his body was found outside, as though he had been killed by another while trying to escape the blast. The prime suspect for the death was a man Mary had grown close to, James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell. Just 3 months later, Mary and Bothwell were married. But a lot of historians have argued that this was a forced marriage, not a happy one. Poor Mary. So after all of that, Mary also became a prime suspect in Darnley's death, especially because of Rizzio's killing months earlier. It was determined several weeks later, however, that some of Darnley's own kinsmen, who were also upset about Rizzio, had carried out the king consort's death. But a lot of folks suspected Mary was behind it all, and for a long time. In 2015, somebody submitted an official inquiry into Mary, Queen of Scots' involvement with the death. Professor Sue Black of the University of Dundee performed a contemporary investigation of the killing, based on accounts and illustrations of the 16th century crime scene, and determined that there was no way Mary could have been involved. Took people long enough. The mystery of the Grand Duchess Anastasia was solved faster. Just like modern women, Mary was not immune from having somebody in her life think no means yes and get lost means take me, I'm yours. Pierre de Boussoquel de Chastellux was a French court poet who traveled with Mary on her return to Scotland in 1561, and the two got kinda close, sharing a kiss, swapping romantic rhymes. But Buddy was doomed when he was found twice hiding in the Queen's bedchamber, once at Holyrood Palace and then 2 days later at another castle. Then the poet was discovered carrying a dagger or some sort of sword. Some folks thought he was spying for the English, others were like, nah, he's just in love with the Queen. Buddy Boy went the way of the rope necklace of death at Mercat Cross in St. Andrews in February of 1563 for his crimes. So even though it seems like Mary wanted more descendants than just James, she was also unlucky in the birth department. Poor thing. While imprisoned in Leven Castle, Mary gave birth to stillborn twins. Meanwhile, Bothwell was forced into exile in Denmark. He later became insane and passed in 1578, and with the help of the brother of the castle's owner, Mary was able to escape her prison and raise an army of about 6,000 men. When her army was defeated, she traveled to England with the hope that her cousin, Elizabeth I, would help her regain her throne, or just help her at all. So going back to when Mary was in captivity, she attracted a lot of attention as a figurehead for the Catholic cause in England. Numerous plotters and conspiracies centered around crowning Mary as queen following a foreign-backed invasion and rising in the north. So, remember how I said her army was defeated and she wanted some help from Elizabeth? Elizabeth was very cautious of Mary. She didn't really feel welcoming towards her, and she ordered not one but several inquiries into the events that had taken place in Scotland. And those took a while. I think it was for almost 20 years that Mary was held captive while Elizabeth was investigating. Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spymaster, kept a very close eye on Mary, and Mary didn't do a lot to help her cause. She wrote very lengthy letters to the people that were involved, and in 1586, Walsingham revealed that he had intercepted letters between Mary and Anthony Babington, a plotter seeking to unseat Elizabeth. Mary clearly agreed in writing to the plot going ahead, and Walsingham persuaded Elizabeth to put Mary on trial for that treason. Yeah, she was found guilty in October of 1586 and sentenced to death. Speaking of which, her death wasn't swift and painless, and there was a puppy? So somehow it took multiple tries to successfully behead Mary. On the first blow, the executioner missed her neck and struck her on the back of the head. Ow. And with the second blow, she was almost completely decapitated, but the executioner had to saw through a bit of sinew with his axe. And it took a while. I think it took several swings to finally get everything tucked away. And when, as customary, he lifted the severed head to proclaim God save Queen Elizabeth, he found himself grasping a wig. Yeah, Mary's head, with the lips still moving, fell to the floor. A lot of eyewitness accounts noted that Mary's short gray hair was under the luscious wig. Very scandalous. She was very proud of her hair. After the deed was done, there were multiple reports that the Queen's small dog emerged from her skirt, terrified and drenched in her human redness. Apparently, Mary enjoyed the company of 22 lapdogs while living amongst the court. Following her death, the dog refused to leave the side of its master and died shortly after the execution. And because nobody really wanted Mary to become a martyr, the block and all of Mary's possessions were burned because they didn't want anybody taking trinkets or souvenirs. Mary used white wine to wash her face, given the belief it would help maintain her fashionable alabaster complexion and also help with pain relief. I'm writing that down for the next time I have a headache. History Today reported that she had an additional bathhouse built at Holyrood Palace, her home in Edinburgh, specifically for this bathing process. According to Mickey Mayhew, author of The Little Book of Mary Queen of Scots, the cost of her expensive beauty regime became a bone of contention for her keeper, the Earl of Shrewsbury, whose allowance to keep Mary in custody was cut by Elizabeth I. I'm not shocked, doesn't sound like she liked Mary very much. Most people get their first job when they're around their tween years, but Mary got assigned hers at just 6 days old. For context, her father, James V, King of Scotland, died on December 14th of 1542 following the Battle of Soy Moss, which left the little one next in line to the throne. For obvious reasons, the job was held by regents until the young queen came of age. By the time she was about 5, she was betrothed to Henry VIII's only son, Edward, because he wanted to secure an alliance with Scotland to distance it from France. But the Scots said no. Henry wasn't too pleased with the decision, so to make sure everybody was aware of his displeasure, he started the entire war between Scotland and England. So, at just 6 years old, just 1 year later, Mary was now betrothed to Francis, Dauphin, heir to the French crown, which was done as a measure to secure a Catholic alliance against England, which was Protestant at the time. And the rest, well, we've already covered that today. And that's it from me, folks. I've been Alexa, the resident emo girly. See y'all next time I buzz in over here at Bumblebee.